In a world strained by competing powers and escalating geopolitical pressures, unexpected signs of detente are beginning to emerge, two significant turning points, thawing India-China relations and renewed diplomatic efforts towards peace in Ukraine. Now, India and China, long at odds over trade and borders, are taking cautious steps towards reconciliation. Meanwhile, in another theater of global tension, new moves are unfolding to reshape the path towards peace in Ukraine, where U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for direct talks between Zelensky and Putin as Europe weighs in with NATO-style security pledges, raising profound questions about the balance between political pressure and prospects for peace. How might these developments alter the geopolitical landscape, and what comes next? To answer this question, stay tuned to In Depth, In Focus. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi have hailed steady progress in improving relations between the two countries. According to The Guardian, this comes amid efforts to resolve the long-standing Himalayan border dispute, which turned deadly in 2020, leaving 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers dead. Both sides have since held talks to de-escalate tensions, withdrawing forces on agreeing on border patrols. Wang described the situation as entering a steady development track and emphasized restored border stability. The thaw in ties coincides with global geopolitical shifts instigated by Donald Trump's trade tariffs, which accelerated India-China rapprochement. However, fundamental differences remain, and India continues to balance its relationship with China while managing tensions with the U.S. Modi is expected to visit China in October for discussions with Xi Jinping. In the shadow of simmering trade tensions and recent border standoffs, a subtle but meaningful shift may be underway. Reports now suggest that China is ready to address India's critical needs, possibly setting the stage for broader normalization. But is this a genuine breakthrough or just a diplomatic olive branch amid external pressures? To unpack this, we're joined by Mr. Marvin Lee, geopolitical analyst joining us from Hong Kong. He's known for his deep insight into Sino-Asian strategic dynamics. Welcome, Mr. Lee, to Qnews. Now, what drove China's decision to ease these export curbs at this moment, in your own opinion?
Assalamu alaikum. Good to see you again. From Beijing's perspective, this is a matter of timing and strategic momentum. China faced heightened pressures from USA with tariffs and technology restrictions, and it recognized the danger of simultaneous confrontation with multiple major powers. By easing curbs like on India, Beijing is practicing what Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, said. Avoid fighting battles on all fronts. Confucian philosophy also stressed harmony in relations, not surrounding interests, but reducing unnecessary frictions with other countries. Economically, stabilizing trade with India offset global supply chain uncertainty and position China as a partner rather than an obstacle, especially ahead of Modi's Shanghai Cooperation Organization visit in October.
So could this reflect a broader diplomatic overture? Now, is China recalibrating based on regional or global pressures?
Yes, absolutely. This is not just about economics, but also soft power and image, as I have mentioned yesterday. In Chinese thought, strength often comes from flexibility. The soft overcomes the hard, and by easing restrictions, China projects adaptability, showing the world it can adjust without losing face. Geopolitically, China is reshaping the world order, it knows that the US is relating its allies. So Beijing seeks to prevent a hard coalition against China. Engaging with India through cooperation is part of a wider diplomatic overtune, reducing hospitality in Asia to focus on its strategic competition all around the world.
So how has the border conflict in 2020 actually affected diplomatic and trade relations between India and China?
The armed conflict in 2020 severely damaged trust between both sides. And for example, like the high-level political exchange flows, but at the same time, 5 years later, I can see that both India and China would like to improve the relations between both sides because they can see that in an ongoing geopolitical conflict all around the world, they can maximize their national interests by collaborating with each other in a very short term or future.
Okay, so how does the rebuilding of ties between India and China relate to India's relationship with the United States and the Quad alliance?
From the Chinese perspective and from my own analysis, we can see that India is also playing the hedging diplomacy. So like to improve the relationship with China and also maintain a very good relationship with Russia and USA just to maximize its own national interests. So like I believe that like to be friends, not to be friends, to improve relations with China, to increase their own bargaining chip to bargain with USA because they have their own version of trade war between India and US at this moment.
Mr. Lee, can this move be seen in the context of broader US-China tensions or leverage via Washington's shifting policies?
Absolutely. So China sees the US intensifying technological decoupling, semiconductor restrictions, and new tariff war. So by easing these export control and restrictions for India, Beijing sends two signals. First, to Washington, that China has alternative markets. And second, to New Delhi, China is willing to provide stability and opportunities, but also and ready to become more hardliner if there is some harsh topic between both sides.
Okay, so how does this shift fit into India's wider strategic posture, balancing China with growing partnerships elsewhere?
China recognized India's strategy of multi-alignment, building ties with US, Russia, Japan, Southeast Asia, and at the same time managing its complex relationship with Beijing. This mirrors the Confucius concept of the doctrine of the mean, which means to avoid the extremes and preserving the balance and be friends with everyone in order to maximize the national interest. So for China, the key is not to demand in India's loyalty, but to reduce the restrictions, the frictions that force against China.
Okay, I mean, I want you to elaborate on your answer. What might this mean for Modi's upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in China later this month?
So from my own analysis and from the Chinese perspective, so they would like to gain more bargaining chips after this visit in October, just to leverage their talk with China in order to make good deals with USA or even Europe, because like we all know that the relationship between India and China is not very positive because of history.
Okay. Could this trust be fragile? What would derail progress?
Could you clarify the questions?
Could what you have just told me be a path towards trust, or is trust fragile between China and India? What would derail any progress if progress would be achieved?
Honestly, from the Chinese perspective, there is no imagination to the external world anymore. So we trust ourselves more than anyone. So it's just like utilizing India or India utilizing China just to achieve the short-term national interest. Basically, they are saying that they work on trust, but actually, I believe that I do hope that there will be a trust between both sides just to avoid any conflict.
Okay. Well, that was Mr. Marvin Lee, geopolitical analyst. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you. While Asia watches a tentative peace unfolds between India and China, Europe faces a different kind of tension, where war on the continent demands urgent diplomacy. From the corridors of power in Washington to the negotiating tables with Moscow, the stakes couldn't be higher, where the fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance. The Russia-Ukraine conflict continues to cast a long shadow over global security. U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for direct talks between Zelensky and Putin, possibly trilateral with himself. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reportedly receptive to negotiations, conditioned on addressing Russia's security concerns. Europe braces for new sanctions on Putin, even as Swiss officials consider granting him immunity from arrest to facilitate the peace talks. How do these complex competing pressures influence the fragile path towards peace? And to try to answer this question, we need to remind ourselves that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has insisted that Ukraine will only accept a peace deal with Russia if it comes with strong, ironclad security guarantees. The Politico stated that despite pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump, who personally told Zelensky and European leaders that Ukraine would have Article 5-like NATO protections, no concrete details were provided. Following this, Kiev's allies formed a coalition of the willing to address the security guarantee issue. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading a commission with Ukrainian and European officials to finalize these guarantees. The challenge remains significant as Ukraine seeks robust assurances, while European leaders and the U.S. work to develop a security framework that meets Kiev's demands without committing to full NATO membership. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. And joining us now is Professor Kamran Gasanov, a political science professor at the University of Strasbourg and Ryak expert from Moscow, bringing in valuable insights into Russian calculations and diplomatic strategy. Welcome to Q News, Professor Gasanov. Now, how sincere is Putin's openness to talks? What do we know about his conditions for peace, particularly regarding security interests?
So, good evening. If you ask about Russian conditions and Russian position, I would say that generally we have seen not major transformation. Generally, Russia still insists on non-entering Ukraine into NATO. It rejects any Western troops in Ukraine. It asks about recognition of its new 4 regions and some other conditions which were officially mentioned. But partly I see some changes and shifts in order to find common language and common ground with Donald Trump. If you remember the meeting in Alaska, Putin there said that he is not against some security guarantees. So it means that Russia also tries to adapt its position in order to move forward peace process. And today, the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, he said that in the guaranteeing of these security guarantees, we need participation not only European countries. He mentioned France, United Kingdom, and also the United States, but also China and Russia. And it shows that Russia is not against some security guarantees, but the main question is what the form of these security guarantees. And one thing which may cause some problems is ceasefire. But here I think that Trump and Putin are united. They don't think that it's too important. The most important to find a general regulation of this conflict. And if they find, then we can stop the battles.
Okay. So, how might the upcoming European sanctions against Putin affect the negotiation dynamics, in your own opinion?
So I think that new sanctions, so there are existing sanctions, and Russia is already used to live under them. But if they will impose some new sanctions, especially if the Trump will do it against Russian partners like India, like China, I don't know, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, in order they shouldn't buy Russian oil, then I think this can break the negotiations. And moreover, the sanctions, the destroying the sanction system is one of the parts of these proposals, which was made by Russia. And Russia thinks that if you want to solve this Ukrainian conflict, the sanctions should be lifted. And I think in these terms, there are some understanding between Trump and Putin, especially after Alaska, because before this summit, Trump said he admitted sanctions, but now he says that he doesn't speak about it. And even in the meeting with the European partners, he didn't mention the sanctions. And I think that his position that until we continue these negotiations, we have some peace process and progress. Better not to impose sanctions, but the European countries, Germany, especially, they think that sanctions could be the part of negotiations.
Sir, what is the significance of Swiss officials' readiness to grant Putin immunity in this context?
So it's a positive step. Hungary is also ready. Many countries are ready. But I think that even they guarantee this security for Vladimir Putin, the European countries, maybe except Hungary, are not the favorite one for peace communication for the summit between Zelensky and Putin, because they already showed, let's say, their face. So I mean, in the eyes of Russian president. So they imposed sanctions, and especially Switzerland. It was harmful because Switzerland was always considered as a neutral country. But a couple years ago, 2 years ago, they had some conference concerning Ukrainian conflict, and then Russia also rejected Switzerland as a mediator. I think that Russia would prefer some other countries, Asian, Middle East countries. I think it could be United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, where our foreign ministers already met. Maybe Turkey, because Turkey also did huge job. And today there was phone conversation between Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan. I think it could be a sign that Russia prefers exactly these countries as mediators.
Does selecting Budapest or Geneva indicate trust or political nones? Can immunity be granted without undermining the ICC's authority, in your own opinion?
So I think it's not a huge problem, because if you remember, I think it was last year or previous year, Putin visited Mongolia, and Mongolia is also part of this treaty. But despite the fact we have experienced no arrest, and I think that they can make some exclusion and in the name of peace. But the problem is not the judicial. I think the problem is political, and Russia doesn't I wouldn't say doesn't trust, doesn't want to have some affiliation with these European countries because in today I think that there is only we can speak only about good relations and trust between the US and President and Vladimir Putin. I mean that Putin speaks and conducts these negotiations thanks to Donald Trump. And in his statements, Vladimir Putin said that we are ready to move to progress if European countries and Ukraine will not make some restrictions and cause some problems. It shows that Vladimir Putin hopes that the decisive role will be played by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump the only player in West who could move these peace talks forward to the progress.
Mr. Gazanov, can Article 5 style guarantees from Europe be effectively delivered without NATO framework?
So I think that they can find some formula about security guarantees, but I doubt that Russia will agree the presence of European troops. So they should discuss about it, speak, make some conversation, and find some solution. I think that when Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, admitted today the security guarantees with the participation also of the European countries and the United States, maybe he means that it could be observers, because observers it's a milder form, it's not soldiers, and it would be very strange if Russia agrees on some European soldiers, because European soldiers it means NATO soldiers, and the one of the main reasons of Russian special operation, military operation in Ukraine, it was named that NATO is entering the Ukraine. So Russia is against entering of Ukraine to NATO and entering of NATO to Ukraine. So no NATO military bases in Ukraine, and I think Russian foreign ministry should clarify still what Lavrov means by Europe being part of the security guarantees.
How do these international maneuvers reflect, let's say, broader geopolitical interests beyond Ukraine?
So there are many implications of this conflict. First of all, it touches mostly the world economy. I would say that because this great trade links between Russia and European Union, and the European Union was the trade partner number one for Russia. They are broken. Big projects are broken, like Nord Stream gas pipeline. And with the United States, Russia had very limited trade, but we had big investments from the United States, and this investment and trade relations perspective of good trade relations are also broken. And if you speak about geopolitics, I think that one of the main implications of the war is changing the world order towards. So it's already started to be a multipolar, and I think that after this operation, it's more multipolar than before. And other countries except Russia, who always wanted justice, multipolar world order, Middle East countries, they feel them now more comfortable than before the war. So I don't say that they thank Russia. Maybe some of them will thank Russia, but generally we see the result that even small countries, middle countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, and partly India, they can sometimes reject the US proposals, feel them independent, and they don't need advices from the United States. And if you see the first visit of the US president, it was made to Saudi Arabia. It shows that now the United States tried to attract their attention, their love of these countries in order to make some deals with them. So the US still they're strong, but they should respect the other countries. And the speech of Donald Trump in investment forum in Saudi Arabia showed that the US now changed their position, and they apologize for all these wars they conducted in Middle East, and they should respect Middle and other great countries.
Sir, what are the primary obstacles to reaching a durable peace agreement? Of course, Ukraine joining NATO is the basic obstacle, but what else, in your opinion, forms some sort of obstacle in reaching an agreement?
So I think if we speak about tactics, so this could be the ceasefire demand from the European countries, and some Western medias like BBC, New York Times, they wrote that it was almost a conflict between Donald Trump and Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, and European countries, I would say, in whole, they tried to achieve immediately a ceasefire. Trump says it's so, maybe it will be, maybe, so it's not important. And Russia says that we don't like to stop the battles until we find comprehensive solution of this conflict. But if you speak about strategy of the peace agreement, I would say the most difficult questions are the security guarantees. We already talked about what the form of security guarantees. It's clear that Russia is against NATO, entering of Ukraine to NATO, and against the presence of Western troops there. And European countries want, for example, Great Britain, they proposed that it should be some sort of the Article 5 of North Treaty, Atlantic Treaty, so like NATO membership, and I'm not sure that Russia will accept it. Maybe it could be entering Ukraine to European Union, what Trump now proposed, and he criticized the Hungary. And the second question, what can make some obstacles? I think the problem of territories. But the main problem is not which territories Ukraine will cede. Maybe they will cede everything what Russia controls, maybe also in administrative borders. So there are some territories in Donetsk Russia doesn't control. Russia wants them to include in its territories. But the problem of recognition. So if Russia will demand to recognize all its territories, so it could cause some problems, because I think that European Union is not ready, Ukraine is not ready, and I think that Donald Trump will not try to accept this demand of Russia. So he will say that we already de facto we accept them as Russian. The euro we cannot guarantee. So if you insist on this, then we are not ready with this peace deal. And here maybe they will, but it could be also a compromise. So I admit also that Russia will agree that Western countries, other countries, they don't officially recognize Russian new territories, but de facto after the peace deal, these territories will be understood like Russian territories, and Ukraine will not try to take them back.
Yes. Well, that was Professor Kamran Kasanov, political science professor at the University of Salzburg and Royak expert. Thank you so much for joining us. The stories of India and China, Ukraine and Russia illustrate the immense challenges that nations face in seeking peace and cooperation amid competing interests and historical wounds. Whether it is rebuilding trust between old rivals or navigating the path out of conflict, the pursuit of diplomacy demands resilience and vision. You were watching this episode of In Focus. I'm Hana Al-Hamalawi. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more updates on Q News.